Welcome back. In this session, I'm going to talk about some of the psychological aspects of this program having to do with motivation. The first has to do with why you want to lose weight. I would strongly recommend that you write down why you want to lose weight. Use simple declarative sentences like, I want to see my kids or grandkids grow up. I don't want to get diabetes or cancer. I want to be able to go on long bike rides. I want to be able to buy clothes in a regular store. I want to be able to fly comfortably and coach. I want to have more fun. Your list should be your own and it should be very personal. But write down 5 or 10 of the main reasons you want to lose weight and put it someplace where you will see it frequently. As they say, sometimes when you're knee-deep in alligators, it's difficult to remember that your purpose was to drain the swamp. This whole program is about change, and change is hard. Keep reminding yourself why you're doing this. The second thing I'd like to comment on is food addictions. I don't want to get hung up on what is actually an addiction from a medical point of view. To you, it seems like an addiction. Think about the food you know you shouldn't eat because it isn't one of your eating periods, or it isn't one of the things you've planned to eat, or it's a food you really shouldn't be eating very much of anyway. You want it bad enough that you will build an impenetrable wall in your brain to block out all of the reasons why you shouldn't eat it. Why in the long run, it's going in totally the wrong direction. You will seek out and eat sometimes unimaginable quantities of it. You may gulp it down in what amounts to a feeding frenzy like sharks or other carnivores. You may hide the fact that you're eating it. Later, you'll feel guilty about having eaten it and vow never to do it again. To me, that meets most of the criteria for an addiction. Why do you do that? And how can you so totally block out all of the reasons that it's exactly the wrong thing to do? Scientists can give you a lot of explanations having to do with dopamine and pleasure centers and learned behaviors and other things. But none of them will keep you from doing it again next time. For me, the problem is comfort foods, and I'm sure sometimes I've used food as a way to anesthetize myself in the rough times of my life. I actually remember one time in college when I ordered a large pizza from a local pizza shop, ate the whole thing, and immediately ordered another one from a different pizza restaurant. Obviously, that has nothing to do with hunger. What I can tell you is this: if you can go for a period of time without giving in to your addictive foods, the drive to eat them decreases. I believe this is an actual physical response, not just a habit you're breaking. Eating foods that are high in sugars and fats changes the bacteria in your gut. It also dramatically changes your insulin levels. There is not yet a clear understanding of how this affects your eating compulsions or whether this is even the mechanism by which your compulsion is reduced. But when you go for a period of time without eating your addictive foods, your desire to eat them does decrease. Fortunately, it happens rather quickly, often within about 3 weeks. I'm not saying that there aren't still times that I really want a piece of chocolate cake, especially if there's one in front of me. But I am saying that if I can go 3 or more weeks without having one, my ability to resist is considerably increased. So even though you could choose to spend some of your calorie allotment on desserts, I'd advise you not to do so, at least not at first. Eating the addictive foods may satisfy you for a few minutes, but the main thing it will do is to make you want more of them in the near future. And because they are so high in calories, they will substantially reduce the amount of other food that you can eat, which is likely to leave you feeling hungry rather than satisfied. Obviously, this isn't helpful when you're trying to limit your calories. So am I saying you can never again have the foods that you most crave? No, of course not. That isn't realistic. As a friend of mine once said, you may not live to be 100, but it's going to seem like it. There are always celebrations such as your birthday and other times when you really want to participate in the treats. But I am saying that you would do well to eliminate them entirely for the first few weeks. And then be aware that it doesn't take very many times when you eat the foods you're addicted to for the addictive pattern to get reestablished. And when you do indulge, try to have a small portion and count the calories in your food diary. The next thing I want to talk about is what I call the groove. In my experience, losing weight is either easy or nearly impossible. There doesn't seem to be any middle ground. I think of it as getting in the groove. Once you're in the groove, it's easy and you can't understand why you didn't do it a long time ago. When you aren't in the groove, your efforts to change seem to last about 10 minutes. So, how do you get in the groove? I wish I knew for sure. All I know is that sometimes both your motivation and a good plan come together at the same time. You do well for a few weeks, and suddenly you're in the groove. I think that if you can adopt a very positive attitude and follow this eating plan for a few weeks, you will find that you are in the groove too. But I won't deny that there have been many times when my efforts lasted only a few days, and I didn't get in the groove. My advice would be to really try to stick with it for at least 3 weeks. I think that in most cases you will then be in the groove and be able to continue indefinitely. Just have a heightened awareness of how critical those first few weeks are and how easy it is to jump out of the groove at any point in your journey. The fourth thing I'd like to talk about is the dreaded plateaus. It's one of the nastiest problems we have to talk about. Frankly, and there really isn't any way to sugarcoat it, this one really sucks. I can't tell you the number of times I've been going along in the groove thinking everything is going great and inevitably projecting when I'll be at this goal or that goal, and wham! Suddenly, even though I swear I'm doing exactly what I've been doing all along, progress comes to a screeching halt. This is frustrating, depressing, unfair, and most of all, demotivating. It's probably the biggest reason why in the past I have sometimes fallen out of the groove. I think your body basically doesn't see this weight loss thing the same way your mind does. Your mind thinks this is great to lose weight and see all kinds of opportunities opening up. Your body thinks you're trying to starve me and I need to stop you from doing that. It finds ways to reduce the number of calories you're burning each day. Essentially, it becomes more efficient. I don't know all of the ways it does that, but it happens. In addition to that, you're getting smaller than you used to be, so you don't require as many calories each day. I wish I could say I have a wonderful solution that just makes this whole problem go away, but I don't. What I can tell you is that you need to be prepared, because it almost certainly will happen to you at some point. Probably at a point where you're fairly far along in your journey. Perhaps this is one of those forewarned is forearmed situations, but I do have some advice for you when it happens. First, don't give up. This is just another obstacle you have to overcome. But you've already made so many changes, you can make one more. By the time this happens, you have probably already lost a lot of weight on this eating program. You have to believe that it works. It does, and you know that. Get through the plateau, and it will start working for you again. Double check to make sure you aren't subtly cheating. Are you still weighing and measuring everything? Or have you started to cut corners by assuming you know how much 15 grams of something is without measuring it again? Are you eating a few off-the-books items that couldn't possibly make a difference, so you don't count them? Do an audit on yourself. Make sure that you really are doing the same things you did before you got on this plateau. Change what you're eating. Come up with a new list of standard meals, at least for a while. Your body's adapted to what you've been doing, so do something different. If you were eating cereal for breakfast, try eggs. If you were eating sandwiches for lunch, try salads. Change as much as you can and still stay within your calorie allocation. Maybe even change the time of your meals a little bit if you can. Change the type of exercise you're doing. Your body's gotten used to what you were doing and has found ways to do what it thinks it's supposed to do. Keep you from starving. So throw a whole new scenario at it. If you were walking, try biking or swimming. Whatever you were doing, change to something different, at least until you bust through this plateau. If possible, increase the amount of exercise you were doing at least for a while. Maybe even change when you're exercising. Reduce the number of calories you're eating each day. I know you don't want to hear this one, but you may simply have lost enough weight that you can no longer lose weight on the number of calories you've been allowing yourself. Don't do anything drastic, but maybe reduce your calories by 10%. As you come out of the plateau, you can experiment to see if you can add these calories back in, but do so carefully. And as I said, don't give up. This problem is inherently discouraging, but you can get through it. Look at all you've already done. The program works. By the time you get to a plateau, you know that. Just hang in there. The fifth thing I'd like to discuss is what I call power ideas. Power ideas are those that are meaningful enough to you that they will break through the wall of separation you've created in your mind that allows you to do counterproductive eating. They give you the strength to do what you should do rather than what you want to do. I think it's really important to have a list of power ideas that you can draw on when faced with temptation. Power ideas are extremely personal. What works for me may do nothing for you, and vice versa. Here are some of the power ideas that have worked for me, but you should develop your own list and put them where you can't miss them when faced with temptation. Hunger is what it feels like when your body is burning fat. It's easy to feel that you're being really abused if you feel hungry and can't eat. That doesn't happen often in this country. But try to think of it positively. When you feel hungry, you can be almost sure that your body has switched to burning fat. Congratulations! That's what you were trying to do. It's working. If you always do what you always did, you'll always get what you always got. I mentioned this one before, but it really seems to work for me. This whole program is about change. If you keep doing what you used to do, then you'll keep being fat. Make this time be different. Don't do what you always did. You know where that goes. I want to live to see my grandchildren grow up. Maybe for you it's your children rather than your grandchildren, or like me, maybe it's both. I think every parent and grandparent wants to stick around long enough to see their offspring unfold. To put it bluntly, you can't do that if you aren't here. There are no guarantees, but we know that being fat makes you less healthy. I want this very much, and most of the time I'm willing to give up a little temporary pleasure to get it. Food is not the answer. Whatever it is that you're feeling or thinking that makes you want to eat something that isn't in your food plan, food won't help. In fact, it will only add a problem to whatever you are dealing with. If it's stress, get some exercise. If it's depression, get some help. If it's boredom, leave where you are and go do something. There's always a better answer to whatever's making you want to do unplanned eating. Food is not the answer. I deserve a long, enjoyable retirement. Life can be hard. I've worked hard, and I suspect you do too. It would be a great tragedy to work your whole life and finally get to the point where you should be able to take it easy and do some of the things you put off, only to lose your health or your life because your body just couldn't carry all that weight around any longer. It happens. It happens a lot. When you get to be my age, you really notice the difference between those who took care of their bodies and those who never succeeded in doing so. Being fat will not define my life. We all think about what our life means and what people will say about us when we're gone. I simply can't abide the idea that the first thing that will come to people's minds when they think of me is, boy, he sure was fat. That's just not going to happen. This really isn't that hard. This is so much easier than the really hard problems some people have to deal with. I'm not at war. I'm not a refugee. I don't have a horrible disease. I haven't lost a child or a spouse. I'm not broke and homeless. All I have to do is plan my eating and stick to my plan. I can't do that? Really? You gotta wanna. Do you want this or not? Nobody else can make you do it. Every ounce of fat on your body entered through your mouth. At some point, that's all there is to it. You either really want it enough to do it, or you don't. Those are some of my power ideas, but you should create your own list. Put them wherever you have the most trouble avoiding unplanned eating. I can't tell you how many times my list has caused me to change what I did in the next 5 minutes. My list also includes some visual pictures that help me. For example, picture the yucky lard in that pastry trying to get through your blood vessels. Or imagine a pile of whatever you want to eat sitting in a garbage dump. This is cognitive weight control. You're putting your mind in charge. Give it some ammunition that's useful to it. Many years ago, when working with a dietitian, she asked me to track what my motivation was each time I ate. We were both very surprised to discover that one very common one was that I had a bad taste in my mouth that I wanted to get rid of with sweets. I don't know whether that's a common problem, but for me, using mouthwash with a thorough water rinse after most meals, chewing sugar-free gum, and occasionally sucking on cough drops has helped a lot. You should also be aware of how important presentation is. Don't just slop your food onto a plate. Take an extra minute to make it look nice. It really makes a difference in making you not feel deprived. Do things to enhance the apparent volume of your meal. For example, slicing a banana really thinly makes half a banana almost as big as a thickly sliced whole banana. I add 15 calories of whipped topping to my waffle because it makes it look like a real treat rather than a diet food. Use the smallest plate or bowl that will hold what you're eating. I nearly always eat my lunch and breakfast off of an 8-inch plate rather than a 10-inch one. And I eat my evening snack in a custard bowl rather than a large cereal bowl. It makes a difference. It really does. The next thing I want to talk about is how to deal with other people. I know that some people get a lot of support from talking about the fact that they're changing their approach to eating or have lost a certain amount of weight. I get that people are different, and that's fine, but that's never been a good approach for me. I prefer to keep my eating program as private as possible because if I tell someone all about what I'm going to do, I seem to get so much reinforcement that it reduces the chance that I'll actually do it. I get along better if it's a big surprise when someone notices that I've lost weight. Also, if someone tells me I look slimmer, I want to know it's legitimate, not just their attempt to support me. I've also discovered that what people say isn't what I hear. What they say amounts to something like, "I see that you're losing weight. That's wonderful. You look great." What they mean is something like, "You have a serious medical problem. I see that you're trying to do something about it. That's great. Keep it up." What I hear is something like, "Whoopee! Problem solved. I'm not fat anymore. I can go back to letting my body decide what to eat." So, I'm not at all sure this will be true of you, but for me, it's better to just do it and talk about it after it's done, not before. I strongly recommend that you focus on your health, not on how you look. Just don't spend a lot of time worrying about how somebody else thinks you look. Unless you're hoping to have a romantic relationship with that person, it really doesn't matter what they think you look like. And frankly, if you get outside of your fat-oriented worldview, a lot of them don't look so hot either. Even if you are focused on a romantic connection, how you look is a poor basis for the relationship. It may help you get started, but my experience is that after a couple of years, what your partner is speak so much more loudly than how they look, you couldn't really even say objectively how they look. You want to expand your life possibilities by being healthier and not having this extra burden to carry around with you. You want to make your life more fulfilling. You don't need to make yourself more appealing to somebody else. They've already got the advantage of being thin. They don't need for you to be more decorative, too. In the long run, your life possibilities are what matter. The scale is just there to help you achieve that objective, not an end in itself. I suppose the last thing I will talk about in this session could be called a pep talk. Accept that there will be bad days. They must not become the reason for giving up. You won't be perfect, so don't use that as an excuse to quit. Forgive yourself for a few screw-ups, but don't be so easy on yourself that you don't progress. Think of all the people who have to deal with really hard problems, like paralysis or blindness or cancer or life-threatening allergies or starving or abusive relationships or mental illness or being in a war. Your problem is a lot easier than that. It really is. You don't deserve to be fat. Nobody does. You're not morally weak. You just have a problem that's a poor match for your abilities. Whether or not it is the same problem that a lot of other people have been able to solve is irrelevant. I personally feel that it isn't the same problem, but when it comes down to it, who really cares? It's the hand you have been dealt, and you won't get another. Whatever you do in this life is going to happen in the body you currently inhabit. Just accept that and deal with it. Some say that fat people have poor self-control or willpower. My experience is just the opposite. Every fat person I know has already lost a lot of weight. They just weren't able to keep it off. But losing weight in the first place requires you to exert cognitive control over what your body wants to do. That's willpower. Many people who aren't fat have never had to do that. Their body just does it for them. So this isn't a personal failing. It's just that your body doesn't quite work right. Don't get hung up on the poor me thing. Actually, there are an awful lot of fat people out there, very fat people. Your problem really isn't that unusual. You're not being singled out for some awful fate that nobody else has to deal with. It's undeniably true that any eating program ever designed can be made to fail. If your need to get sympathy by demonstrating that you have the worst weight problem on the face of the earth is greater than your desire to lose weight, you will find a way to make this program fail. I surrender. You win. Just understand the choice that you've made. But you can do this. I really believe that from my toes to my head. I did it after lots and lots and lots of failures. This program works. Believe in it. I know it'll work for you too. So those are some of the motivational factors that will come into play during this process. And here's your limerick for this session. This was the night of Jackie's blind date. She knew from experience he'd react to her weight. He took one look at her size and sneered, "Baby, you're no prize. I got someplace to be and I'm late." In the next session, I'll try to put the whole cognitive weight loss program together for you. See you then.